this. Okay, well, good afternoon. My name is Melody Euler. I'm a tournament director with ACBL. And we're here today to do a refresher course as we're getting ready to return to face-to-face bridge. We're glad to have a full house today, 500 of you, and people that are probably not happy that they didn't get in. So good thing you were on time or early. So today what we're going to be covering is roles as the director, skill sets we're going to use, delivery of rulings, fractions, frequent play infractions, auction infractions, and then we'll talk about unauthorized information. We're also going to do a brief demonstration of ACBL score. I've asked Bradley Bartol if he'll also demonstrate how to upload your results to Live for Clubs and demonstrate some of the technical issues that people are experiencing already. We're aware of those. I think they're working on them, but we're going to try to give you some ways to hopefully get to the right place to be able to be successful in uploading your game files. So anyone can run a bridge game when there are no problems. What distinguishes a good player, a good director, excuse me, is their ability to perform under pressure. So when things go wrong, that's when we are given the opportunity to shine. So we're going to talk a little bit first about our responsibilities as directors. This comes from Law 81, which empowers us to provide a safe and temperate space for our players. This is particularly important these days with our return to face-to-face, people and their concerns, their health concerns. So making sure that the area is a safe playing space, cleaned, keeping the game moving. This is very important for a successful game. It's always good to post a clock. 2 reasons to post a clock. One is that it lets the slow people know that they are behind and need to catch up. It's a timed event. It's a little different than we've been doing for the last 14 months with BBO. When we get behind, everybody comes to a grinding halt instead of them just being moved to the next round without finishing boards. So it's important to be on the floor, moving boards, moving people, and aware of the slow pairs. But the second thing having a clock does is it reminds the fast players that they are just ahead of the field. There are a lot of times that I have fast pairs that come to me over and over again, telling me how these people are so slow. But the problem really isn't that people are slow, it's that this pair is particularly fast. And so it's great, if you have a clock, you can just turn and say, would you look up there? Look, there's still 5 minutes on the clock. So they can go and get a snack or go out and smoke their cigarettes or do whatever it is that they want to do. Another responsibility we have is to make correct rulings. One of the most important things you do as a club director is you have access to your law book. You want to be reading your law book. It's not War and Peace. We can get through it pretty quickly. There are a lot of little trails to follow from one law to the next. So it's good to always have this on hand. There is no award for giving the quickest ruling. There is a great reward for giving a great ruling so that your players have confidence in your ability to make the right rulings. Be sure that all players' rights are protected. We don't want to show favoritism. And then educating your players about the law. One thing I did as a club owner, when I was directing was each week I would take some obscure portion of the law or some other portion of the law and just make a copy of that portion and put it on all the tables. So maybe related to minor penalty cards or different laws that maybe are not as well known so that people can have an understanding and start to really understand the law a little bit better. Sorry. So you're going to have club policies. Every club has their own supplemental regulations that they can post. You decide if you're in a zero tolerance club. In Austin, where I live and play, every game we make the announcement that this is a zero tolerance club. And those kinds of behaviors that are defined as violations will not be tolerated. And if you encounter this kind of behavior, please notify the director and it will be dealt with. So another policy you might communicate is, what are your cell phone policies? There are some who say the minute they ask you to turn it off at the beginning of the game, and if it's seen or heard during the game, just as a tournament, there's going to be a prescribed penalty for that. You may have a method for appealing rulings. You may not allow appeals, but you want to be consistent whether or not you do allow appeals of your rulings. We are going to spend some time later talking about unauthorized information, misinformation, and then polling players and consulting with other players to beef up your rulings so that hopefully you don't have to have even a situation that would arise, that you're making the best ruling possible by gathering the information that you need. You might have a slow play policy that players are not allowed to begin their last board with X amount of time on the clock, maybe 3 minutes when you're down to this much. And then also you want to have a place where they know where they can go look for their results, look for excuse me, what events you have coming up and that kind of thing, a calendar of events. Okay, so let's talk a little bit briefly about delivery of ruling and good technique. It's been a while since we have actually directed. We've been administering games online, but there are a whole lot of things that we have to do face-to-face that we have not been able to practice over the last 14 months. So the first thing we want to think about, and these first 8 things that I am going to talk about are things you might look at these 8 and say, I wonder where I'm kind of needing to brush up, or I may be really strong in speaking clearly, but I'm not very confident. I'm not self-assured. So that again comes from reading the law book and from practicing. So the first one is quiet in a low key tone of voice. We want to be able to speak where our players can hear. We have lots of players who have difficulty maybe hearing. So you want to be sure that you're speaking in a way that they can hear you, but you don't want to be projecting this information across the entire room. So also clear pronunciation, appropriate speed, not speaking too quickly. I know I'm going through this all quickly today, and I apologize for that, but we'll try to do it at a pace where everybody can get it. Self-assurance, understanding the law for yourself. Then phrasing and emphasis. There are laws that have several different options available to a player. And so you want to be sure that you are emphasizing words, that you're breaking these things down into manageable parts that they can understand. I mean, an example is one we're going to talk about in a moment, where there's a lead out of turn and they have 5 options. You may have a novice player that just, when you say 5 options over and over again, they just glaze over and they say, oh my gosh, that's just, like they just have no idea where to start. And so with those players, you need to be sensitive to break these things down in a way that they understand and be sure that they do understand. Having a non-threatening posture. Body language is very important. We don't want to be frowning at our players. We don't want to be standing over them with our arms crossed. We don't want to be pointing our fingers. And we want to be making good eye contact, especially if it's a decision that only one player at the table is going to be able to weigh in for. So we don't want them looking at their partner to try to gain some kind of direction of what choice they should make, but we want them to be looking at us. Okay. So tips for making rulings, making sure each player's viewpoint is heard. Treating people pleasantly, avoiding snap decision on judgment rulings. There are going to be times that you are called to the table that you are going to have to determine a course of action at the moment, But there are going to be other times that although you determine a course of action where you say, we need to go ahead and finish the auction and play the hand before you can make a determination if there was, say, damage due to a failure to alert. But you don't have to make those snap decisions all the time. You have the rest of the session to gather the information that you're going to need to make the right ruling. Also, not injecting your own ego into a decision or a situation. My first NABC was in 2014, and I was being shadowed by one of my senior directors, and he watched me delivering a revoke ruling where I was talking about how I was going to award them this number of tricks, or I was going to award them that number of tricks. And he said, you know, Melody, you should really take yourself out of the equation. You should not award anybody anything, but the law says this, or the law. So if you get in the habit of presenting your rulings with the law says, and again, for you to be able to say what the law says, you need to know what the law says. But you can get out your law book and actually read a small portion of the law if you want to do that, if it's a difficult ruling. But always saying the law says this about this subject, that will give your ruling more weight. Okay. Listen to other directors to pick up good points. If you're at a tournament, especially maybe a larger regional, and you have a session free, you could go and shadow another tournament director and watch how they deliver rulings, the things that they say, or watch some of the senior directors in your club. If you're from a larger club that has more than one director, just being able to pick up those points is helpful. Be sure that you're aware of what's going on at the table and make sure that every player understands why you've made the decision you have, and offer to discuss later in detail. You may run into a case where a player wants to argue with you about the decision that you've made. And at some point, we have to just continue playing. This is not good for you and the player, and it's not good for the room. So you just want to quiet the situation, assure them that you're willing to listen and to discuss what it is, and just move on from there. Acknowledge your own mistakes and correct them. We have in our laws 91, I believe, that talks about when we make a mistake as directors, director error. It's not 91. Let's see.
Is it 83?
Yeah, it might be. No, that's actually it's 82. Director error, 82C.
82C.
Yeah, 82C. Thanks, guys. So
I knew it was down there.
Yeah, I never have to look there, right? No, but when we make a mistake, we treat both sides as non-offenders. So basically, both sides are going to get an average plus or some score that's better for each side because of an error we make. And when we come clean, when we apologize, it actually instills confidence in our players that we are willing to admit that we're human too, that we make mistakes, and that we're willing to acknowledge those. If we're treating our players fairly in our clubs, if we're treating them well, they're going to forgive a lot of little mistakes that we might make as directors. So it's just really important for us to be treating our players with respect. And practice, practice, practice.